Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India. Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. In this session, we are going to discuss human resource management practices and approaches in gig economy firms. We all know that definition of gig economy relates to the single project or task for which the worker is hired on work on demand. So, the economy which is based on these kind of tasks and of course followed by the monetary exchange, that economy, that aspect of economy is called gig economy, and the work of this nature is called gig work. We all must have heard about, or most of us would have used the services of Airbnb, Uber, Zomato, etc. The specialty of the gig economy firm is reflected in these examples. These examples or these organizations have become part of our daily lives. So, Uber, though it is a company which uses its platform to take people from one place to another in number of millions every day all across the world, does not own a single vehicle. They do not have drivers as their full time employees, and still this is a transport company. That means it is in the business of taking people from one place to another. Airbnb, which has so many properties all across the world, millions of people again check in the Airbnb properties all across the world, does not own a single property. So, properties are owned by the requesters who post the information about the properties on the Airbnb website, and Airbnb connects these requesters with the customers. Similarly, Zomato, you must have heard about the very successful IPO of Zomato last week. It delivers large number of customers their favorite cuisines without owning a single hotel. So, these are the examples of gig economy firms which are governed based on technology, where people engage with their service, people approach these organizations as a requester wherein they list themselves. This is also supported by the gig workers who connect the requesters and the end customers. So, in this session we will look at what is the role of HRM in the gig economy firms. We will try to recognize the changing role of HRM in these firms. We will also study the ecosystem perspective of HRM, which is proposed to be most relevant for gig economy firms, and we will also identify the special competencies required for HR professionals to perform well, perform optimally in the gig economy firms. I would like to especially acknowledge these two articles from where large portion of this lecture is being drawn. These two articles in a way are very recent and also gives very comprehensive understanding about the HR issues in the gig economy firms. So, there are multiple examples in so many sectors of the economy which are influenced by, which are having very large significant players which in the form of gig economy firms. So, in the transportation we gave example of Uber or Ola in India. For cleaning related help there is a Helpling, or even the urban clef has now started giving the cleaning facilities. Household to do it yourself kind of stuff, that is offered by TaskRabbit. Programming related work is crowdsourced in the Clickworker platform, and again the urban clep or some similar platforms are acting as an aggregator for the household service providers. It range from cleaning to carpentry to electrician's work to massage to the haircut and so on and so forth. In all aspects of life, gig economy firms have now entered. Why a MBA or an engineer should well versed with the gig economy and gig economy firms? It is related to the larger schema or the trend observed in the corporate world, in the organized labor sector. That trend is that there is low engagement in amongst the full time workers. Independent workers are found to be more satisfied with nearly in every aspect of their working lives in comparison to the full time employees. 74%, 3/4 freelancer prefer being an independent workers. So, those who are working as freelancers are not working because of their compulsion, most of them are working because of their choice, and that is why 3/4 of them do not want to become the full time worker if given a chance. So, it is important to understand how the economy is changing, and accordingly the job of the future will be getting generated in these firms. So, we are going to study gig economy firms not as an outsider. We need to understand gig economy firm as a phenomena which is not only influencing us as a customer, it is also going to influence us as a working professional. It is going to also impact our professional choices. It is not only the consumption choices, but the professional choices also going to be affected by the gig economy firm. Full time jobs are actually disappearing. Instead of creating jobs, companies are increasingly disaggregating work from the jobs and they are going for the outsourcing. Large number of automation related initiatives supported by AI and ML are helping companies, organization in many ways to scale up their operations, yet at the same time decreasing the number of full time employees. I will give you example of a retail bank. Earlier in a typical retail bank there used to be officers in a small or in a middle sized branch in India. There would be 4 or 5 probationary officers or bank officers plus a manager, and there would used to be 5 to 7 number of clerical staff. Clerical staff used to have a major responsibility of checking the records, maintaining the records, etc. With the advent of the core banking services and the digitization of the banking jobs, banking related activities and transactions, role of clerical staff has decreased very significantly. So, in many public sector banks where they cannot retrench the employees when they are not needed or for the particular job for which they are hired, many of them are training these clerical staff to work as marketing professional, at least to some extent, wherein their job now not only includes taking care of this record, because that takes very small time, but they are also supposed to go out in the market, build the network and get the customers. So, companies are deliberately making efforts, and technology combined with globalization is facilitating that effort to reduce the full time job. Secondly, full time employees are becoming worker of the last resort, because for full time employee organization has to provide many. The trend of hiring full time worker and independent contractor and combined with automation and outsourcing gives immense freedom and flexibility to the business organizations, and because of this flexibility because of this flexibility they prefer not to hire full time workers, because with the full time workers they have to meet many other social security related or working condition related or dispute resolution related or representation related statutory requirements. So, inherent in the gig economy is the choice, sense of autonomy, flexibility, control that drive worker satisfaction, but which full time employees often lack, and as a result of that more and more people, particularly the millennials, will be having a preference towards working as independent professionals. And there will be many more platforms connecting the requesters in the form of independent professionals or independent small companies, small setups like small restaurant etc., connecting the service providers, and this trend is going to increase. MBA students or bachelor students, in fact all the people who have career as all the people who have to work in near future need to be well versed with the functioning of the gig economy. So, MBA student need to take now active interest in pursuing contract work, consulting projects, freelance assignment, and MBA program needs to prepare them to find these works to be successful in gig economy. So, gig economy we are going to discuss the HRM aspect of it, but are inevitable part of us, our life as customers and as professionals. We need to have good understanding of the functioning, we need to be aware of it and aware of this aspect of economy, and we need to identify the appropriate competencies which can help us to be successful in the gig economy situation. The specialty of the gig economy firms are that they do not provide direct employment. Very few people are directly employed in these economy firms, whereas large number of people, most of the people who are working for this particular firm are independent workers and they are not in the direct employment of the company. Second, there is a flexibility to workers for the company. So, workers can anytime stop their association with one gig economy firm and build an association with another gig economy firm. Firms are powerful and they gain power as their network grows, that result into network effect. Network effect gives power to the firms and that power can be used to control the behavior of their associates as well. So, you can see it is a very complex situation. They do not have the direct employment, they do not give direct employment, workers have flexibility, but eventually these firms going to have major ways and lot of data to control the behavior of the service providers or associates. So, naturally the HRM function going to be different in these firms. When we talk about independent workers, we see several terms being used. Some of these are given here in the form of crowdsourcing, e-lancing, independent contracting, work on demand via app, interim freelance project work, etc. These words will be changed, will be used interchangeably in this session. Wherever their meaning differ, I will be explaining how they are different from each other. For example, e-lancing and work on demand via app may involve sourcing of micro tasks that are very structured, predictable, like delivering meal or translating piece of text, a piece of voice into the text. So, these are very structured kind of task, but short lived assignments, this term is generally used for the tasks which are less structured and more creative in nature. So, the tasks which require idea generation, idea evaluation, problem solving activities, these are the short term assignments. In a typical gig economy firm, we see a triad in relationship. In triad is of the intermediary, worker and end user. So, worker and end users are connected by the intermediary, and in this way we see there are three major entities operating in any gig economy firm. Based on the functioning and the level of engagement of HRM, we can identify 4 types of the platform firms or gig economy firms: information providers, matchmakers, administrators and intermediary platform firms. Information providers, for example, they give online job boards. So, LinkedIn is a very good example, and this falls in the social media. There are other examples also in the social media which provide basically the platform to give information. So, they are information provider. In these kind of firms, HRM responsibility is very low. So, for example, Twitter. So, Twitter is also information provider, but they have less of HRM responsibility towards their end users. They have major responsibility in terms of the validity of the content or the suitability of the content. So, for that they can have policies, otherwise there are not much HR related responsibility of these firms for the service providers as well as for the content generators. HRM activities are designed to be or implemented by inventory, generally is related to the recruitment process. So, they recruit people, they help in recruitment, that is it. Then there are examples of matchmakers. Matchmakers, the Bharat Matrimony is one example of the matchmaker. Headhunters, the organizations which help companies to identify suitable talent like Naukri.com or Monster.com, etc. There the role of HRM becomes little more engaged, little more intense, because they need to do the background check, they need to know the validity of the information posted, they need to know more details of the requester as well as service provider, or they need to have the information checked of the even the consumers. In this in these kind of firms, recruitment and selection, these two activities become more important. Administrators are like they work as temporary agencies. So, they do not engage with the customer in the full employment kind of mode, but their service, but their services are of more engaged nature. One example is of the NoBroker.com. This NoBroker.com, this company provides a platform to connect the home sellers and prospective buyers. They also connect home owners and prospective tenants. They not only connect, because that connection or matchmaking is done by the search firms as well, but they are called they can be called or they should be called administrator, because they not only connect, they also employ field officers who actively engage with the customers, those who have to purchase home or sell home. They look for the inspection of the property, they ensure that all legal provisions are met when the deal is completed. So, this kind of economy, this kind of firm requires more active HR. So, here that recruitment and selection and appraisal, compensation also are important part of HR activities in the administrator's organization. Then comes the intermediary platform firms. Intermediary platform firms are like online labor platform firms, platform cooperatives. The level of HRM responsibility is much higher in these firms. So, example like Zomato or Uber or Urban Cap, these are the examples of intermediary platform firms, because large number of service providers, large number of independent professionals are associated with them, and large number of customers take important services from these requesters or these professionals. These professionals are supposed to behave in certain way, they need to maintain certain level of professionalism to ensure that these firms have to actively engage in not only recruitment and selection, but also job design, workforce planning, performance appraisal and training and development as well. So, depending on the engagement, the intensity of the engagement of the firm, we can get different types of the gig economy firms, and in the different types of the gig economy firms, role of HRM happens to be of different nature. Complexity is immense in this environment, because here it is not a typical triad actor which works in the formal firms with respect to HR practices. What is the formal triad actor? The formal triad are the HR managers, line managers and the employees. They all have a clear cut contract about their relationship and about their exchanges. In the gig economy firm, though contract is there, but there is lot of flexibility in that contract itself. So, this typical triad does not operate in the gig economy firm. So, pay administration is there in the gig economy firms, but fee is not paid by the company, it is paid automatically or it is paid by the person who gets the service from this from the associates. Performance management is also there. Many of you, most of you rather, would have given the rating to the driver after taking the ride from Ola or Uber, but that and these kind of ratings contribute to the performance management of the service provider, of the requester. In this case it is the driver who is the requester, but that performance management and that performance data is given by the end user and not by the supervisor or not by the organization. Organization at best compile this data, and based on this compilation it can reward or punish the requester. Thirdly, coordination and control work involved in the gig economy generates lots of data. For example, the Uber driver can be tracked wherever the person is, if the person is driving or not driving, sitting idle, all that behavior can be tracked. Similarly, for the Zomato, we can know which is the restaurant which supplies best chola bhatura in particular community, or what is the particular dish which is very popular, which is the most popular of a particular restaurant, or in which area what kind of products are in demand. So, all these information are available to the gig economy firm, and that is the result of their immense coordination and control process, and this information provides lot of power to these companies. They can influence the behavior of the requesters remotely. And as a result of this complexity, we come across certain cases. So, there is a famous case of the London Central and Employment Tribunal. Judge actually held the claimant that they are the worker and entitled to be paid annual leave, sick pay, maximum 48-hour working week, national minimum wage and protection of the whistleblowing legislation. To whom? To the drivers of the Uber. The claimant sought compensation for failure to pay the minimum wage and failure to provide paid leave. So, two claimants complained of the detrimental treatment on the whistleblowing ground, and the decision of the case came in favor of the claimant, that they should be treated on many aspects, about many aspects, as equal to as the workers. Second case is again of the UK, is between the Pimlico Plumbers Limited and appellant. In this case as well, Supreme Court rejected the appeal by Pimlico Plumbers to the finding that Mr. Smith, who is the appellant, by virtue of extensive control over his performance and requirement for him to provide services in person, had the status of worker under several pieces of legislation and not as self-employed. So, gig economy firm, with the help of technology, with the innovative business model, they generated certain special kind of the arrangement and interaction, but these interaction and engagement in these two cases were compared as a full time worker kind of association. So, this case is by a claimant versus Deliveroo. This is another platform firm which is which provides the delivery services. So, the Spanish court ruled that Deliveroo rider is an employee rather than self-employed contractor. As rider in the question was a Deliveroo employee, the court found that his dismissal from the company was inappropriate and ordered him to be either rehired or compensated. So, you can see that technically we can say that gig economy firms are not hiring people, but they have so much control on these associates that in these three cases the claimants or the requesters were considered on par with the full time worker of the organization, and as a result of that they were found to be liable to get the facilities or compensation similar to, not exactly, but very comparable to a full time worker. So, in order to address some of these issues, these authors whose reference I gave in the beginning have suggested the ecosystem perspective on HRM. What is the ecosystem? Ecosystem is a interaction of several variables which has input, which take input through certain process and which has certain output. Ecosystem are always made up of, or we can say an ecosystem is always made up of a small ecosystem which is part of the larger ecosystem. So, ecosystem here refers to a group of interacting yet semi autonomous entities that depend on each other's activities and therefore are somewhat hierarchically controlled. This is the model given by these authors, which suggests that intermediary platform firm has exchange with requester, gig worker. Exchange takes place in all these three players, and on the platform ecosystem HRM uphold the multilateral exchange, and multilateral exchange is shaped by HRM activities. What are the HRM activities? Human resource or workforce planning, recruitment and selection, training and development, performance management, compensation and benefits. So, these activities still take place even if in the gig economy firm there are practically 0 full time employees. So, they do have full time employees in their Airbnb office or Amazon office or Uber office, but that number is much lesser in comparison to the number of drivers Uber has, or number of the delivery boy, or number of the restaurant being enrolled with the Zomato. But there also, even pertaining to the requesters, they use certain HR activities in the different shape and different form, and that not only helps in upholding the multilateral exchange, that also is shaped by multilateral exchange. So, ecosystem approach is very useful because like any ecosystem, this ecosystem, the gig economy firm, if considered ecosystem, also is constituted of certain entities that include at least gig worker, requester and intermediary platform firm. Second, the 3 entities make up an ecosystem because they interact through supplying labor, demanding labor, matching labor supply and demand while remaining semi autonomous entities. And thirdly, exchange among gig worker, requester and intermediary platform firm are characterized by interdependence and multilaterality. So, the whole system can flourish together or sink together. We can take example, we can understand this ecosystem with the example of Uber. When Uber driver withdraw from the Uber ecosystem, there is a limited value created for the passengers. So, for the passengers it is a value diminishing act. Contrary also hold, when passenger stopped hailing taxi driver or taxi rider via the Uber platform, Uber drivers will not reap any benefit as there are no earnings to be made. Ultimately, the value to intermediary platform firms also depend on the ongoing contribution of gig workers and requesters. So, therefore, ecosystem actors are said to be complementary in nature. The activities of one ecosystem actor do not function and provide limited value without the action of other actors. So, value creation requires constant, fruitful, functional interaction of all 3 entities, and the entities can increase as the complexity is increasing, as the technology is becoming more and more sophisticated. We are seeing multiple entities in any online platform system which constitutes the gig economy firm. Now, we will look at how different functions of HR will look like in gig economy firm. So, first is workforce planning. Workforce planning in a way is the core HR work for any gig economy firm, because intermediary platform firms must know when the demand will come, where demand can come, how to engage requesters and how to engage the service providers. In order to scaling up, that is what they need to know, because the scaling up for the gig economy firm is nothing but enhancing their network, and enhancing their network nothing but identifying the requesters and tracing, looking at the train where the maximum requesters are available, or in which season or for which particular service requesters are available and the customers are available. They use the services, they make use of the intermediary services, and they have certain ways of managing the workforce planning and drawing the benefit of appropriate workforce planning. One is surge price. If on certain time of the day the demand of the taxis or demand of the Zomato service provider increases, they can increase the price for that particular point of time. That has potential to impact both the demand and supply of the requesters and service providers and customers. They do workforce planning and strengthen their workforce by marketing campaign. So, initially they give lot of offers. In fact, many very famous effective gig economy firms are actually loss making. They keep making losses for many years or for few years till the time people become habitual of their services. Then they also use the techniques of the temporary price reduction. This generally happens in the time of the slack or in the time of entry into the market. Once people are familiar, they experience the convenience provided by the platform, then they can increase the price. So, seen from the ecosystem perspective, this creates a multilateral value benefiting all ecosystem actors involved. So, all these three things eventually help all three entities of the gig economy firm. Second is recruitment and selection. Seen from the ecosystem perspective, it is important that the recruitment of both actors run in parallel to avoid mismatches in the supply or demand of the labor. So, they need to recruit the service providers, they also need to recruit the end customers. In some cases, the careful recruitment is required. In some cases, general recruitment process is good enough. For example, Uber, the task is very structured. You check the availability of the driving license and anyone can become the Uber partner. But if click worker has to ensure that they properly match the software developers or web designers with the customer who approach their platform, they must know the capacity or competence level of their requesters. So, they need to do the conscious selection of the requesters for a particular task offered by a customer. So, they need to in fact do the grading as well. What is the level of that complexity one requester can handle in comparison to another one, and accordingly they need to connect the customers and the requesters. Training and development is also like that. It is done extensively, sometime it has to be done extensively sometime to ensure that service delivery remains at a optimum level. So, training for gig workers and training for the requesters both are important. Training for the gig workers, example is of the Uber driver. They are offered instructions on how to improve their passenger ratings and earnings, while online intermediaries may offer pre-employment training to entering project managers. So, Uber drivers, they are the gig workers, they can be, they many times are required to provide the training so that they can satisfy their customer better. Another example is in the New York City, Uber does require poor performing taxi drivers to attend training sessions. You must have noticed that there is some basic training is given even to the drivers, even to the Zomato gig workers, about the courtesy, about their customer interaction, about the process they have to follow. Training and development is not only required for the gig workers, it is required for the requesters as well. For instance, a meal delivery platform like Deliveroo or Uber Eats, they instruct their requesters, and who are the requesters? Requesters are the restaurant. So, they train the restaurant on working on the algorithm to ensure that meals are ready on time when the gig worker approach them, so that the gig workers time is not wasted, and this restaurant can also serve large number of customers. So, training is required for gig worker as well as the requesters. Performance management. Now, performance management in most cases is achieved by setting of the performance levels and using the requester feedback to rate the gig worker performance. It works in two ways. First, the star rating, so that helps in tracking the performance. Second, gig worker create the value for the requester, and requester is given some autonomy to release the payment of the gig worker only after ensuring that desired service is offered, service is delivered, product is delivered of the desirable quality. So, a star rating often add to the and reflect the gig worker's online reputation, which locks the gig worker into the ecosystem, and generally ecosystem cannot take their online reputation to another platform. So, for example, on Uber some driver has accumulated certain reputation in the form of rating. So, this remains locked for the for a particular company pertaining to one requester. Second, performance rating should ensure that gig workers create value for requester, because these ratings are used to allocate future gig as a basis for refusal or access to the platform ecosystem. So, this rating decide whenever the next service opportunity occurs, who amongst the available gig workers get that opportunity. So, that is a very stringent performance management system, because it is constantly given by the customers, end user or the requester. Rating is not only given to the gig worker or the requester, ratings are also done for the requesters and for the end user as well. The rating is not only given to the gig worker, requester, but it can also be given to the end customer. In the example of Uber, end customer and requester are the same, the gig worker is the driver. They have in 2008 applied for a patent based on some artificial intelligence technology to check whether consumer, the customer of the Uber, has consumed excessive level of alcohol or not, and they did it with the use of the way customer is holding the phone, has held the phone while booking the taxi, or how many mistakes he has done while feeding the information to book the taxi, so on and so forth. So, they have identified some indicators, and using the artificial intelligence technology, they developed a patentable IPR to check the rating, to check the this aspect of the consumer, and based on that they can give rating to the end user. That happens in the Ola as well, because it is not only us who give rating to the driver, driver also gives rating to the customer. Compensation and benefit, that is a perhaps the most crucial aspect. It is the reason why people engage with the platforms. So, in terms of the compensation, requesters compensate for service provided by gig worker and for the effort spent by intermediary to match supply and demand for the labor. To ensure that gig workers live up to the requesters' expectation, intermediary platform firms may grant requester the possibility to hold back payment from gig worker when they feel gig workers' performance is below par. This is another way of ensuring control through compensation. From the ecosystem perspective, it is important that gig workers find the level of compensation beneficial and appropriate, and that is why some platforms are ensuring that their gig workers get at least the minimum level of the wage. Intermediary firm may also ask requester to provide gig workers with secondary benefit. For example, the Deliveroo ecosystem, the restaurant, they provide coupons and discount to the gig workers in return for their active contribution in the ecosystem. So, that becomes another form of compensation for the gig worker. So, compensation and benefit also you can see is affected by, it is controlled by not only the platform, but by the requester as well. What are the competencies required for HR to carry out these processes effectively? Number one, workforce analytics and insights. they lead to better decision system, and they lead to more personalized experience and personalized treatment, and that is the very important competency HR need to have. They need to incorporate multi and cross disciplinary perspective. So, they need to understand marketing, supply chain, technology mediation, customer behavior, stakeholder management in order to carry out any HR activity, whether it is whether it is compensation or benefits, performance management, recruitment. They need to understand this whole phenomena. They need to understand the nature of their ecosystem, the nature of their market from the multidisciplinary perspective. So, even if even Zomato has to look at their demand occurring in particular time in particular area, they need to use the econometric model, they need to know what are the social gatherings or what are the social functions going to be organized or during that time. They need to know, are there going to be major festivals at that time. They need to market their services according to those occasion. Means this is pretty cross disciplinary work which HR has to be aware of. Challenge for HR is how do people create an ecosystem in which they learn continuously and still be productive. There is so much data is being created because of the coordination and collaboration involved in the gig economy firms, that they need to constantly churn the data and constantly track the taste of the customers, nature of the technology, availability of the product, so on and so forth, to remain relevant in the marketplace. Because one major improvement by the competitor can make one platform, another platform redundant. So, they have, because all this is based on the IT based technology, and IT based technology, the beauty is that it can be changed very fast. One major innovation can make all other apps redundant in a particular industry, in a particular segment. So, the HR need to be constantly looking at the best practices and constantly observing the trend, and accordingly manage the HR processes which we mentioned a short while ago. Managing change is very important ability for the HR to perform well in the gig economy firm. HR professional, because of these features, have to be very highly digitally savvy. They also need to have the data fluency. The data fluency is explained as a capability to recognize the emotion and take decision based on data. So, you need to recognize if there is dissatisfaction, if there is a complaint, if there is a grievance of a gig worker or requester, but the resolution can be done based on the data, and managing data as well as acknowledging and recognizing the emotions of the requester or the customer is very important capability for the HR to perform optimally in the gig economy firm. Third and equally important thing is coaching, mentoring and guidance, developmental conversations. They need to engage with gig workers and requesters. They do not have, the platform owners do not have the formal authority over gig workers or the requesters. So, if they want these people, these partners, these entities to perform well, so that whole system can be benefited, they cannot exercise their authority. They need to engage with them in a developmental way, and that is why coaching, mentoring, guidance is the only way they can influence the behavior of the requesters or the end customers. So, HR activities in gig economy are designed to control and ultimately uphold the multilateral exchanges among gig workers, requesters and intermediary platform firms, such that all actors are subject to HRM activities. You can see different HRM activities are performed by different actors in the ecosystem. Now towards the end of this session, I would like to highlight, basically these are highlighted by the researchers whose reference I have shown in the beginning of the session. So, I would like to mention about these special issues related to HRM in gig economy firms. First issue is about the life cycle. Life cycle of a platform has a major influence on the relationship or the quality of relationship they have with the gig worker and the requester. When a platform is launched, generally they adopt very friendly policies for the gig workers and requesters. As they reach to the level of maturity, as their network increases, their network effect also increases, and they are able to get more income and more profit. In that process, their relationship and their power over gig worker and requester also changes. In the beginning of the launch, most of the gig economy firms invest hugely and they do not incur profit. As the network grows, network effect grows and their prosperity and their profit grows. In that situation, what is the optimum level of profiteering? That is unresolved question. Another aspect is of the hybridization of the HRM activities. We in the previous slide also explained different HR activities is conducted by different entities in the ecosystem of these kind of firms. So, customer give feedback to the driver, driver give feedback to the customers, restaurant give feedback to the gig worker give feedback about the restaurant, platform compile this data, sometimes platform also gives evaluates the efficiency of the requester, and they also look at how much business is given by the requester to the platform, and accordingly they design the differential treatment. So, you can say lot of HR activities related to benefit and compensation or performance management, they are conducted by different actors. How to integrate these, how to keep these justified and ethical, these are the unresolved questions. A special case of surge price on a particular time of the day, Uber increases their price. Now, that increase in the price of the taxi or price of the ride, what should be the percentage of the sharing of that between the requester and the platform? Both have their different logic. Someone can say 50-50, but then company may say that we invested a lot in the beginning to build the network and eventually network is beneficial to all the people. Why shouldn't we take major chunk of this surge price, because that is my pure profit. Driver will say that okay, you have built the network, but it is me who is the requester who is providing the service. So, I am also equally important. So, why you should keep the biggest chunk? Likewise, these are some special cases which need resolution, and HR has to work actively in resolving these issues in all the gig economy firms. HRM activities or bundle thereof are used to uphold the different types of ecosystem. So, Uber's ecosystem is different, Zomato's ecosystem is different, Byju's ecosystem is different. What are the good HR activities? Are there activities, good HR activities relevant to all major platforms, or which are the special HR activities especially relevant for a particular platform? That needs to be studied. Lock in gig workers for a certain period to ensure that they continue taking part in the multilateral exchange. How it can be dealt ethically? This is also unanswered question, and each company has to figure out their own solution pertaining to locking in the gig workers. So, in this session we looked at the nature of the gig economy firms and what are the challenges of the HRM, how the different functions of HRM have changed drastically in these firms, and what are still unresolved issues in that, and what is the perspective, the systems perspective what we discussed likely to be useful in addressing some of the HR related issues in the gig economy firms.